If you're on Windows, this is the installation video for you. If you're on Linux or OS X, the last video was for you. You can go ahead and skip this one. From here on out, I am going to assume that you're on Windows. The goal is to install MongoDB on our machines. This is going to let us create a local MongoDB database server. We'll be able to connect to that server with Node.js, and we'll be able to read and write data to the database. This is going to be fantastic for the To-Do API, which is going to be responsible for reading and writing various to-do related information. To get started, we're going to grab the MongoDB installer by going over to mongodb.com. Here we can click that big green download button, and there are quite a few options on this page. We're using the community server and we are on Windows. If you go to the version dropdown, none of these versions are going to look right for you. The top one is what you want, Windows Server 08 R2 64-bit and later with SSL support. I'm going to go ahead and start that download. It is slightly big, just a tad over 100 megabytes. So take a moment to start the download, pause the video, and when your download is done, you can go ahead and click play. My installer just finished. I'm going to go ahead and start it up. It's one of those basic installers where you click next a few times and you agree to a license agreement. Go ahead and click the custom option for a second, although we will be following through with the complete option. If you click custom, it's going to show you where on your machine it's going to install it. And this is important. Here, you can see it's on my C drive, program files, MongoDB server, then the 3.2 directory. This is going to be important because we're going to need to navigate into this directory in order to start up the MongoDB server. I am going to go back though, and I will be using the complete option, which installs everything we need. Now we can go ahead and actually start the install process. Usually you have to click yes, verifying that you want to install the software. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we are done. Now, once it's installed, we're going to navigate into the command prompt and boot up a server. The first thing we need to do is navigate into that program files directory. I'm in the command prompt. I recommend you use the command prompt and not git bash. Git bash is not going to work for starting up the MongoDB server. Right here, I'm going to navigate to the root of my machine using cd // and then we can start navigating to that path. cd program files / mongo db, where db are capitalized, / server capital S / 3.2. This is the directory where MongoDB was installed. I can use dir to print out the contents of this directory, and what we care about is this bin directory. We can navigate into bin using cd bin and print its contents out using dir. This directory contains a whole bunch of executables that we're going to use to do things like start up our server and connect to it. The first one we're going to run is this mongodb.exe file. This is going to start our local MongoDB database. Before we can go ahead and run this exe, there is one more thing we need to do. Over in the generic file explorer, we need to create a directory where all of our data can get stored. To do that, I'm going to put mine in my user directory by going to the C drive, users, Andrew, and right here, I'm going to make a new directory, and I'm going to call this directory Mongo-data. Now, the Mongo data directory is where all of our data is actually going to get stored. This is the path that we need to specify when we run the mongod.exe command. We need to tell Mongo where to store the data. Over in the terminal, we can now start this command. I'm going to run mongo-d.exe, passing in as the db path argument the path to that folder we just created. In my case, it's /users /A Andrew /mongo-data. Now, if your username is different, which it obviously is, or you put the folder in a different directory, you're going to need to specify the absolute path to the Mongo data folder right here. Once you have that, though, you can go ahead and start up the server by running the command. You're going to get a long list of output. The only thing you care about is that at the very bottom, you see waiting for connections on port 27017. If you see that, then you are good to go. And now that the server is up, let's connect to it and issue some commands to create and read some data. To do that, what we're going to do is open up a second command prompt and navigate into that same bin directory. From the second command prompt, we're going to navigate into that same bin directory using cd /program files / MongoDB / server / 3.2 / bin. From here, we're going to run mongo.exe. Notice we're not running the MongoD command, we're running mongo.exe. This is going to connect to our local MongoDB database, and it's going to put us in sort of a command prompt view of our database. We'll be able to issue various Mongo commands to manipulate the data, kind of like we can run node from the terminal to run various JavaScript statements right inside of the console. When we run this, we're going to connect to the database over in the left tab. You can see that connection accepted shows up. We do have a new connection. In the right-hand side now, we can run some commands to create and read data. Now, I don't expect you to take away anything from these commands. We're not going to talk about the ins and outs of MongoDB just yet. All I want to do is make sure that when you run them, it works as expected. To get started, let's create a new to-do from the console. This is going to get done via db.todos. And on this to-dos collection, we're going to call the method insert.insert. And we're going to call insert with one argument, an object. And that object can have any properties we want to add to the record. For example, I want to go ahead and set a text property. This is the thing I actually need to do. Inside of quotes, I can go ahead and pick something. I'm going to go with create new node course. Now, when I run this command, it's going to actually make the insert into our database, and we should get a right result back with an n-inserted property set to 1. This means that one record was inserted. Now that we have one to-do in our database, we can go ahead and try to fetch it using db.todos once again. This time, instead of calling insert to add a record, we're going to call find with no arguments provided. This is going to return every single to-do inside of our database. When I run this command, what do we get? We get an object-looking thing where we have a text property set to create new node course. We also have an _ID property. _ID is MongoDB's unique identifier. This is the property they use to give your document, in this case a to-do, a unique identifier. We'll be talking more about _ID and about all of the commands we just ran a little later. For now, we can go ahead and close this down using Control-C. We've successfully disconnected from Mongo, and now we can close the second command prompt window. Before we go, there is one more thing I want to do. We're going to be installing a program called Robomongo. Robomongo is a GUI for MongoDB. It's going to let you connect to your local database as well as real databases, which we'll be talking about later, and it'll let you view all the data, manipulate it, and do anything you could do inside of a database GUI. It's really useful. Sometimes you just need to dive into a database to see exactly what the data looks like. In order to get this started, what we're going to do is head over to a new tab and go to robomongo.org. Here we can grab the installer by going to download. We're going to download the latest version, and I'm on Windows. I want the installer, not the portable version, so I'll click that first link. This is going to start a really small download, just 17 megabytes, and we can click next a few times through this one to get Robomongo installed on our machines. My installer is all done. I'm going to go ahead and start the process, confirming installation and clicking next just a couple of times. There's no need to do anything custom inside of the settings. We're going to run the installer with all of the default settings applied. Now we can go ahead and actually run the program by finishing the installer. When you run Robomongo, you're going to get greeted with a connections screen. This screen lets you configure all of the connections for Robomongo. You might have a local connection for your local database. You might have a connection to a real URL where your actual production data is stored. We'll get into all of that later. For now, we're going to go ahead and click Create. And by default, your address of localhost and port of 27017 do not need to be changed. All I'm going to do is change the name so it's a little easier to identify. I'll go with local Mongo database. Perfect. Now that we have this in place, we can save our new connection and actually connect to the database by simply double-clicking it. When we do that, we get a little tree view of our database. We have this test database. This is the one that's created by default. We can go ahead and expand it. Then we can expand our collections, and right here we see the to-dos collection. This is the collection we created over inside of the console. I'm going to go ahead and right click that and go to View Documents. When I view the documents, I actually get to view the individual records. Here I see my _ID property and my text property that has Create New Node Course sitting right here. If you are seeing this, then you are done. It means that you have a local Mongo server running, and it also means that you've successfully inserted data into it. We were able to use Robomongo to view the database. We were able to use the MongoD.exe executable to start the server up. Now that we have this in place, we can actually create a node application that takes advantage of MongoDB as its database. That is all coming up next, so stay tuned. I will see you next time.